Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about the teaser trailer that just came out for the Morbius movie. If you haven't seen it already, I'll include a link to it in the description down below. How did I actually feel about the trailer? I thought it was pretty neat. It seems very different. Obviously, it seems like they're kind of going, obviously, more like the Venom route in a certain regard, but I think it's what's fascinating is like Venom seemed to be like more anti-hero because it wasn't really quite sure from the earlier stuff that you couldn't really tell like what direction they were necessarily going with the movie. And it seems, at least with Morbius, it seems like they're definitely going more like villain slash monster, like, you know, route, because it doesn't seem like he's not the good guy in this situation, which, I mean, once again, this is coming from someone who is not that familiar with Morbius. My only experience with Morbius was the 90s Spider-Man cartoon on Fox. That's about it. I didn't even learn this interesting detail because I didn't even know this. Like the whole like, oh, he sucks like blood or plasma from his hands, because that was their way to get around the fact is because it was kind of like a kid's cartoon to a certain extent and they couldn't really show him biting people. So I never knew that. I thought that was actually how things worked for him, but regardless. I'm not even 100% sure if he is an anti-hero. I want to say he is because I know at the end of his story arc in the 90s Spider-Man cartoon, he joined forces with Blade. I think that was the last of his story, if I remember correctly, to be fair. That was decades ago. But still, but like I do like the fact is that they are setting him up in this interesting way of like I said, he is more of a villain because he's kind of like an uncontrollable monster. The fact of the matter is, it's you know, it's that whole thing of like he's a monster of his own creation because, you know, he's a very smart person, but obviously he's had this disease his entire life. They're just trying to cure, and you know, trying to cure yourself, all you did was made yourself into this monster. And I think that's going to be an interesting perspective for this movie because it definitely feels like if you didn't know this was a like Marvel property, you would just think this is kind of like a monster movie. And I think that's going to be a neat element to it because, I mean, like I said, because I despite how people feel, like I think it's kind of interesting the route Sony's going down, like giving villains their own movies. Once again, I know Venom's kind of a different case, but like I said, I feel like in Morbius' case, I think it's going to be like, it's kind of what I was thinking maybe Venom was going to be more of, which obviously what Venom became, I'm not. I actually, I've talked about it, I like Venom, but my initial thought was, well, maybe it's the struggle between, you know, Eddie and Venom, like trying to, that dominance, that ended up not being what Venom was, which I was totally fine with, like the whole almost buddy cop comedy that it was. But basically, it seems like we're getting that element of what I thought Venom might be with Morbius, of struggling with your humanity. You've got this hunger and this thirst, you know, like your typical vampire story. So, it seems like I said, they do have like the very like monster-like elements of just him killing people, snatching them away. It's like I said, if you didn't know this was a Marvel property, you'd be like, oh, that's kind of a horror movie. So I think that's going to be an interesting element to see, you know, this story kind of told from that lens. And then you even have that situation of as he's walking down like an alleyway, he sees like he passes a poster of Spider-Man that says murderer on it, but the Spider-Man they're using is Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, Tobey Maguire's, like with the the webbed like suit and everything. I'm like, that's interesting. And then lo and behold, the stinger at the end, he walks by Michael Keaton as Vulture. I'm like, wait, what? So we are full on being like, oh no, this is all connected. I mean, I guess it makes sense, but then it's like they never made any direct comparisons in like Venom to the MCU, but now doing it with Morbius, I think it's really interesting. Well, because there's talks about like, you know, potentially Tom Holland being in Venom too, but it's like we're directly connecting this. But I guess it's like, once again, it's the whole Sony thing of like, I guess if they ever, whenever the time does come that they, you know, kind of pull Spider-Man back completely from Disney, that they'll have their own little, they can build off of everything that was built off in the MCU. They can't reference the MCU, but they can pull Peter or whatever, you know, Spider-Man's future in that regard, but all his villains like Vulture and stuff like that. So that's just interesting to me, like, huh? And showing that kind of from the beginning too, like letting us know, like, oh, I'm trying to set that up. But that's why I'm like, because the murderer statement, because I was like, you know, it's like, but Peter, like, you know, I was thinking Tobey Maguire, I was like, he didn't kill anyone. But then it's like, oh, if Vulture's in this universe, that must mean it's like, oh, so this is after Far From Home. You know, obviously we're in spoiler territory here, so it's like, so this is after the whole Mysterio thing has happened already too. So I'm like, now that's really, really interesting. So I'm curious to see, like, is it going to be a thing of like, as the movie progresses, he becomes more and more into like the vampiric morphine? Because I don't think he can ever change back. I think it's like over the course of the movie, like the transformation steadily happens, like, because obviously it's also interesting too, because it's like, I mean, like I said, I'm not that familiar with Morbius. I know he can like fly and stuff or glide or whatever, but it seemed like he was straight up like night crawling, kind of teleporting. It looked like there was like this purple energy, and it seemed like it was like it seemed pretty trippy. I was like, huh, I didn't know that was in your like list of abilities. So like I said, I'm finding the trailer interesting, so I'm actually kind of looking forward to the Morbius movie. I didn't know what to really expect from it. Like I said, it's a character I'm not that familiar with, and you know, this is our first look at the movie, so I mean, it seems interesting. So I'm curious to see what they ultimately end up doing with it, and you know, obviously, you know, how that character story ends, because I doubt it's gonna be like a, oh, everything's fine. It's like, no, you killed a whole bunch of people. People know it's you. Like, it's kind of a very public thing. It's not, or at least Eddie and Venom can be like, oh, there was some stuff that happened with Venom, but it's like, Eddie can hide his identity. I think everyone kind of knows it was Morbius. So, well, because I know that his situation is kind of a bit of a tragic love story. I know that that kind of plays a part in his story. So I think we'll get kind of an element of that. I like the lady he's working with. Like, I think that's typically Morbius' story. Like, it is kind of like a tragic, you know, love story. He wants to get cured for the woman that he loves, and I'm wondering if that's the angle they're going down with it. Like, I'm curious to see what they ultimately end up doing, and whether it does end up ultimately having that horror element, because like, it seems like action horror is kind of what I'm kind of getting from it. So like I said, it's just interesting because Sony's going down a route where it's like you're kind of getting the perspective of the bad guy. That doesn't always happen. I mean, like, we've literally only gotten one superhero movie that's really kind of focused from like the bad guy's point of view, and that was Infinity War. So to kind of see that kind of becoming more of a thing Marvel-wise, I think it's kind of an interesting thing. Once again, I know this is Sony Marvel, but you get what I'm trying to say. So obviously these are just my thoughts. In the comments down below, I'd love to get to know your thoughts. Did you like the trailer? Did you not? Does this make you excited for the movie? Does it not? Because I know a lot of people are going like, yeah, they had no interest in this movie. I'm curious, did this trailer change your opinion or not? Let me know. I'm very curious to hear from you. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.